Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress and welcome to our webinar, What's New in ASP.NET 14.1 with Web Program Manager Mehul Harry. You'll see new products and libraries shipping inside our ASP.NET and MVC subscriptions. Plus, Mehul will be discussing updates to our award-winning data grid, our new image processing controls, and the official release of the DevExpress Spreadsheet for ASP.NET and MVC. Thank you so much for joining us. I will now hand things over to Mehul Harry.
Thank you, Amanda, and welcome everyone. I am happy that you are here today. I've got a lot of things to show you, so let's just jump right in. This is what's new in 14.1, and it's for ASP.NET. Now, ASP.NET is one of our flagship technologies. We deliver a set of controls that are very powerful and rich, and in this release, one of the main themes was to make those powerful controls even better and introduce some beautiful new concepts, some demos and so forth that can inspire you. So the first thing I want to talk about is the spreadsheet control. Now, the reason we keep talking about this is because this is huge news, right? If you saw the preview in the last release, you were probably very excited. Now, if you haven't heard, this is now officially part of ASP.NET subscription, so you have this in your arsenal. And what this is an Office-inspired, Excel-like web control that provides great functionality. So let's take a look at this control in action. Now, I recommend if you don't have, let me just bring up if you haven't seen it yet, take a look at the demo center. Now, this is part of the demo center, so I won't bore you with it. But basically, just type in demo center. I have Windows 8.1 here, so you'll see demo center come up as part of the installation. All right, so the first thing is, I want to mention is one of the main things that we've done is we have stabilized this grid. Now, what that means is when we first released it, we were in a bit of a rush to really get what we wanted done feature-wise, which means we didn't have time to address all of the features for it. So for example, we didn't have a client-side API, touch support wasn't there, themes wasn't supported. And I'm happy to say that is all now supported with the spreadsheet control. Now, let's just take a look at how powerful this thing actually is. Now, here, as I would expect, as soon as I click into a cell, if I double click, I can start editing it right away. And you can see that I can put in some information, delete it easily, etc., etc. Now, as I hit enter, I'm able to go down, use the arrow keys very easily, and I've got the capability to also create charts just like I would. So for example, I can select a range of select a range of values and right click and create charts very easily as well. Now, on top of that, you can open and close very easily a spreadsheet. So here we can see we have integrated our file control right into the open menu of that ribbon. So for example, I've got a folder on my server that lists several type of formats. So I can open up CSV files. I can double click on that and easily open that. I can also open up an XLS file. So I've got the schedule file here. And you can see they're all beautiful and powerful, exactly as I would expect them. And I've got full support for formulas. So for example, I got every type of formula that you can imagine, from financial, logical, summations, date, time. You can even define your own. So there's all sorts of formula support. So let's also look at one of the other key things is you'll notice, for example, we don't have grid lines here. So this was one of those features also a lot of customers were asking, like, hey, what about grid lines? I want to be able to have a beautiful UI just like I get from Excel. So that is also now fully supported. Now, you'll notice that the ribbon control is also here. Now, the ribbon control has been updated as well. So one of the things that we did in this release was give you the capability to make the ribbon as a separate, how should I say, a separate control. So you can actually take the ribbon and put it above, and I'll show that a little bit later. But the ribbon acts exactly as you expect. So if I double click on the header, it collapses, expands, and so forth. So this control is now available, and I highly recommend you take a look at all the different type of great sample documents that we have available. We've got capability to do mail merging. which allows you to data bind this. So for example, as you can, let's take a look at the code. So you can see in here, we've got this generate mail merge document that takes a set of data that we've got from Northwind and generates using a template so that I'm able to create this excellent Excel document, including with images, right? So as you can see, this was completely generated on the fly. So then I can take that file and mail it off and so forth. Now, if I didn't want to do it as a single sheet, I can do it as multiple sheets so that each data value can be created with multiple sheet items. Now, you can also have custom data merging. So there's all sorts of great scenarios that you can support. Now, what I like is you can also create, for example, a loan amortization schedule. So if you've got a specific formula and you wanted to have that generated, it's very easy to do as well. Now, I mentioned formulas, and they work exactly as you would expect in Microsoft Office Excel. Now, we've also added a great client-side API that lets you modify and have scenarios where you need to work with cells and so forth. So this is now fully supported. Now, it would probably take a full webinar to go into the spreadsheet. So if you'd like to see that, just shoot me an email and let me know, and we'll get that scheduled, and we'll dive deeper into each of the features of the spreadsheet. All right. Please check out the spreadsheet. We'd love to hear more feedback, but one of the key things is in this release, we have updated the spreadsheet to add more features, make it very stable based on all the feedback that you gave us from the preview beta edition. So it's rock solid now. It's ready to be used, and we welcome you to start incorporating it. And for those of you that haven't updated 14.1, I highly recommend it. We've spent a lot of time to make sure that things have been smooth with this release. All right, now let's move on.
Hey, Mehul, we did have one question that popped up from Michael.
Sure.
Can you do copy down, etc.?
Copy down. You mean cut and paste from Excel? That is supported, yes. Now, I'm not familiar with the term copy down, so I'm going to Google that real quick.
Hey, Michael, if you want to clarify, feel free.
Okay, so it says how to fill blank cells with value above in Excel. Excel will copy the respective formulas. I believe so. My recommendation is, you know what, these demos are online now. So, for example, go to, let me bring that up here. Go to demos.devexpress.com/ASP. And this will bring you to our online demos. Click on Spreadsheet and give it a try, right? So, for example, let's go into formulas really quick, and if I understand him right, I believe so, but I would prefer if he did as a quick test. So, but I think it may be supported, yes. And if not, let us know.
Okay. He says highlight a range of cells and Control D to copy down. I'll test.
Well, let's try it. There you go. Oops. Well, that probably doesn't want me. I probably don't want to do that, so I probably want to do that. And the answer is yes. Okay, so I'll move on.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? While I've got you, while I'm still on the spreadsheet, I'll show one quick feature that I really like, and that's the capability to hide rows. So let's say I wanted to hide number 10 here. I can right-click and click Hide Rows. Now, if you take a look between 9 and 11, 10 is hidden, right? I'll just quickly zoom in. So between 9 and 11, 10 is hidden. There's these double lines, right? Now, what's interesting about that is, oops, I always forget how to get out of this thing. Hold on a second. All right, so if we now select between 9 and 11 multiple rows and right click and say unhide rows, our number 10 comes back. So it's a slick little thing that we've added, and it works very similar to what you might expect in Excel. So it's one of those features that, like I said, we'll dive deeper into if anybody wants us to do a complete spreadsheet webinar. All right, let's move on. The new image zoom control. Now, so far, if you're wondering whether I'm talking about web forms or MVC, I'm talking about both. Everything that I'm showing here so far is completely available in both web forms and MVC. So the new image zoom control is a slick little control that gives you zoom on hover, enlarging the image, hint to support, lots of good stuff. So let's take a look at that. Okay, there we go. All right, now I'm going to bring up the demo center so you guys can follow along. Now, when you bring up the demo center, you'll see these beautiful demos. This is the ASP.NET portion of the demo center. Now, if you go into image and data navigation, this is where you'll find our image zoom control. Now, the idea with the image zoom control was pretty much like you would see on Amazon or Newegg or something like that, where you see a product and you say, well, I want to see the details of that product. So as soon as I mouse over this image, I get a preview. And if I click on it, then I get a full screen modal dialog pop-up. It's very cool, it's very beautiful, and it's simple. So you can essentially just say, hey, here's my image zoom, here's the small, and here's the large images, right? So, and you've also got the capability to add hint support, but what I like about it is that it's really slick. So as you can see, even though it's a server control, we've added a lot of client-side features to it. So when I mouse over, there's a nice animation so that pop-up just doesn't jump right out at you. So in this case, you can see the pop-up's right there. Now, you can see at the bottom, I've also got the hint support right there. So it says zoom window text if I wanted to give some more detail on that larger image. So you've got control over where the window can be positioned, the expand mode, the opacity, how clear that box is right there, and what the large image will do in the large image mode. So I recommend checking out. It's available for MVC as well. And one other thing that we've done is we've integrated with the Zoom Navigator. Now, this is part of our image slider that we introduced before. But what it essentially does, if you have multiple images, you can essentially include the Zoom Navigator, and as you press on it, not only like the image slider will show the image, but as you mouse over, it'll give you that other image on top as well. And what's really slick is you can do some different things. So for example, if you want to have the active item be changed when you mouse over, you can do that as well. So you don't need to have the user click on anything at all. So there's various options. I recommend checking them out. Now let's move on. All right, let's talk about the ASP.NET Grid View. Now this is both a control and an extension, and we are happy to have it updated. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Grid View's new feature. I shouldn't say new feature. I mean, the Grid View is already, in my opinion, probably the fastest ASP.NET Grid out there. I don't know if anybody else is still focused on making a beautiful, fast grid. We certainly are. And that's because we know you, our customers, are using this every day. People are emailing me, sending me scenarios how to use this. So I'm always happy to hear about it. Now, one of the things that we've done, it's a minor thing, but I'm always happy when we do these minor things that improve the grid. And that's that we have now using our own ASP.NET editor controls for links in here. So previously we weren't, so we had to do some styling things and so forth. But now I'm happy to say we are, and that gives us some slight benefits. One of the main ones is that the themes now will look exactly, because now we're using our own editors that have those themes built right in. So before we had to do a couple of little different things, and it also improves performance slightly. Now that's why you haven't seen me blog about it, because it's not a huge thing, but it's those little things that make the difference. It's this attention to detail that we tend to pay to our controls that really makes them, I think, top-notch. All right, the first thing I want to talk about in this release for the grid is the batch editing update support. Batch editing is fantastic, right? People were asking me all the time, hey, Mehul, when are you going to get this feature? This is what my end users want, right? So as long as I've been working here, as long as we've been working with the grid, the one thing is people are always saying, hey, listen, we want this grid, we love it, we want it to work more like Excel, right? And that's fair because Excel was one of the killer products for Windows, for Microsoft. I mean, heck, as much as Apple's winning, even everybody there acknowledges that Excel is still the best for rich desktop functionality, which is why we're very proud of that spreadsheet control because we brought that to you now functionality-wise. But if you're looking to bring a lot of that functionality, the grid supported a lot of that. The grid supported data summaries, sorting, and all sorts of good things. And I believe the batch editing is one of those features that brings you that similar type of feel from Excel, which lets you say, okay, look, I've now just clicked into this cell. So I'm going to say this is now called Chai 2. I'm going to tab. I'm going to use up and down arrow keys. I'm going to tab, shift tab, and I can keep going. I can just use the keyboard. I can become a keyboard ninja and say, listen, this now needs to be $17. This is no longer continued, so I'm going to hit tab, and I can work really quickly. And the other thing is, it's a performance benefit also for you on the server side because I'm batching all of these changes. I'm not updating them one by one. So previously, I might have said, okay, I'm going to update this right now, but now it's all batched so that when I hit save changes, that's when it'll go to the server, or I can hit cancel. The other great thing is I've got the capability to know exactly what I've changed and if I agree with the change or not. So for example, I can go back and say no, and as you saw, when I put it back to the original value and went back and said, yeah, that's not a changed value. So it's a very smart feature that we've added for batch editing, and I love this feature. So what have we done in this release for batch editing? We actually introduced this in the last release, but what we did in this release was we added support for templates. Templates allow you to define your own set of values. Well, not values, I should say, your own look and feel. So in this demo, we made essentially just a very small example. In the edit template for the product name, we put a text box. But what this allows you to do is see how to integrate your own editor using certain client-side events, which you will need. For example, key down and lost focus on what happens when those are triggered. And this is really great because if you do have your own editor, if you do need to do some custom client action for validation and so forth, that is completely supported. So we've updated the client-side API. We've added support for templates in batch editing, so I recommend it. Now pause if there's any questions about batch editing before I move on to the next grid editing feature.
Yes, there are a couple. So how does, from Mike, how does batch editing work if it's in virtual scrolling mode?
That is a good question. Let me get back to you. So we have one of our excellent and support engineers on this, and he will absolutely look into that and get back to you. The short answer is I'm not exactly sure. Right now, my suggestion is like batch editing works great with paging. I believe I'm not sure if it will be supported with virtual scrolling, but it makes sense to use it with paging because what you're doing is if you put it with the virtual scrolling, you're essentially saying is now I want to do it for the whole grid, which is never a good idea, right? Never show. Here's the thing. People ask me sometimes, they say, well, what happens if I don't use paging and I just show all, let's say 80 rows right now? My general advice is don't. Why would you ever do that? It's not a good user experience. It's not a good, the human eye can only take so many rows and work on so many things at a time, right? And if you do want to do that, use our spreadsheet control, right? That's what the spreadsheet control is great at, right? Because the spreadsheet control essentially is the entire product in edit mode, right? So look at the scenario of what you're trying to do. The grid view is a data analytical tool for analysis, right? You can sort, you can group, you can filter, you can do all these powerful things. So my suggestion is, separate out what the experience that you're trying to give to the end user and decide which product is best in that scenario. And we have those. We have scenarios in both scenarios for you. Now, I want everybody to know, stick around. There's a feature I'm super excited about. I'm going to show it towards the end, not to try to tease you, but it's a feature that is kind of new, but it's really cool. Just stick around to the end. I haven't shown it yet. I haven't even blogged about it, but I'm very excited about it. So is there other questions or should I move on?
Yeah, there's a couple. Is the batch editing improvement available for Windows for the WinForms grid?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I believe there's a similar type of feature in Windows, but here's what I recommend. Let's grab that person's email and we will have Paul, Seth follow up with them. But yeah, the short answer is, uh, when I'll give you guys a quick side note, right? There's a talk that I do about our mobile products and stuff. And people are always asking me, what's better, native or hybrid web, mobile HTML5 versus native, and et cetera, et cetera. At this end, I've got this thing that says my philosophy is, you know what, choose what makes you happy, right? So for me, I have to choose. There's so many products in ASP.NET. I tend to focus only on the web side of things, not because I don't love Windows. I used to do Windows. I used to do VCL. But I have to focus on the things that I can best deliver for this product. So I apologize. I don't have the answer for you, but I'll get the answer for you. I promise. So we'll get your email, and we'll have somebody who knows Windows much better than I do follow up. All right?
Yes. Sorry, I asked them to email Paul, and Paul will get
Awesome.
back to you. And there's one more question on batch editing. Can you utilize both record and batch editing simultaneously? Both.
Can you utilize what and what?
Both record and batch editing simultaneously?
You can, okay, sort of. Okay, so I just put the edit mode into row. So the whole grid, the whole page right now is still in batch edit mode, but at least here, when I click on it, I now know I'm on this row. So as a visual cue, that gives it to me. But it's two opposites. It's like saying, can I run and sit still at the same time? Not really, right? So for example, if I go to this is row edit mode right now, right? So if I click on this, right, I have to click edit, and I'm in row edit mode. So it's not, they're opposites. You know what I'm saying? You can't really do that because by UI definition, it's just not possible. And maybe I'm missing something, and if I am, please let me know, right? Email me afterwards, let me know. But as I understand the question, you cannot row edit and batch edit at the same time because they're kind of opposites, right? All right, so shall we move forward? Okay, so we'll move forward. All right, and if I miss something, don't worry, we'll come back at the end. All right, another new feature is the context menu. Now, the context menu is I always like to give the Windows example because let's face it, context menu and Windows go hand in hand. One of the big things is if I right-click, I've got this contextual menu. And if I right-clicked on my C drive here, and that's different than me right-clicking on, let's say, this file here. I've got different context menus. So what we've done is we've added a similar feature to the grid view. Now, this allows you and your end users to get a context menu on the grid. So typically, when you right-click inside of a browser, you get this context menu. This is the default context menu. We override and disable that when you do this on top of our grid. So if you hover over on top of the grid and right-click, then you get this menu. And I'll quickly address that if you're doing this on a touch device like an iPad, it is possible to do a sort of like a long tap or a long tap and a secondary click with another finger. You can Google that, but that's device specific. But as long as, for example, if this was on a touch device, if you were to click this and if you tap this with your finger, eventually that touch event comes down to us as a click. So, we still get those click and right-click actions. So what's great is when you click on this, right-click on this, you get this contextual menu. Now, when I right-click on this row, I've got a very specific menu that lets me expand that row, or I can right-click and collapse it. So it knows the state. The other great thing is I can right-click up here and say, hey, listen, I want to ungroup this. And immediately I've ungrouped this. Or I can say, no, I want to group by this column. It's really, really awesome. I can say, listen, I don't want to see the group panel. I want to see the group panel. Or what I really like is let's clear the sorting, and let's say I want to have a summary for the unit price. Show me the total for the unit price. So I just did a summation of all the unit price values. Or if I wanted to get a count of the units in stock, I can say give me a count. It's smart. It's awesome. I just love it. Now the other thing is, invariably people ask me, okay, are custom menu items available? Yes, they are. So take a look at this menu under grid columns context menu. This export items, those actually are custom items that we have put in. And if you take a look at, one of the things that we've done in the last couple of releases is every demo is linked. These are linked to actual help topics. And I love this, right? Because people are always saying, hey, you guys have great online help. And if you find that we don't, email me. Let me know where it's failing, and I will get that fixed. But I am proud of the work that we've done on our help files. But you can see exactly what is available to you for the context menus. For the row, the column, the footer, the group panel, and how you can create your own context menu items. So please take a look at this. We have examples in here that talk and show exactly how we've got custom menu items and what to do. So for example, I mentioned we've added those 2 export items in there. And what happens when we do double click on those items and have them instantiated. Now, let's talk about one of the last big features. Actually, before I do, any questions about context menu items? Okay, if not, we'll address them.
Sorry. Can the
Sure.
From Ken, can the context menu be themed separately?
Themed, I believe so, and not believe so. The short answer is yes. All right, so let's take a look at it. Won't be in there. I'm going to be showing the theme builder a little bit later. So let's just take a look at it now. DevExpress. If you go to where your DevExpress is installed, in my case it's installed in C, Program Files 14.1, Components, Tools, ASP.NET, Theme Builder. Let me just create a new theme here real quick. I'm sorry, it just popped up on a different monitor here. Okay, so if we go down to the grid view, control, and if we go down to, I believe it's in here. As you can see, there's a lot happening in here, but I believe it's possible. And if it isn't in this release, we will try to address it in a future release. So I will get a more definite answer for you from Alex in our support right now. But in the meantime, I'll move on. In my case, I wouldn't want to, but that's just me. Now, if you absolutely want to have a way to style it separately, and the other thing is, we don't want to just add things for the sake of adding them. Please let me know the scenario. Please let me know why you like to do those things, because those things we find, if they're really useful, we'll think of an innovative way to support that for all our customers. And that's why the scenarios are really useful. All right, other questions?
Ken just clarified he meant by specifying a theme name in the control for the context menu.
Well, I'll tell you this.
What you're saying.
Yeah, you know what you can do? I wouldn't want to theme it separately than the grid, but what you can do is, right now, for example, every control on this website is using one theme. And you can change it, obviously, from this theme tool that we have. But what you can do, Ken, is you can individually style a DevExpress control, even though the whole site may be using a different theme. And so, for example, this control has a property that lets you style and say, listen, use this theme on it. Now, and that's not really specific for this webinar. So the short answer is you can individually style a control, and this control can use a different theme, and in which case the context menu will have a different theme than the rest of the controls on that site, if that makes sense. So the short answer is yes. I wouldn't right now want to make it different than the grid, but like I said, I would like to know your specific scenario, why that's useful, but I'll move on. Other questions? All right. Okay, so I will move forward. Now, the next one is select all rows. I like this one too, because what this one does is in the old version, when you selected all rows on a page, that meant only on the page. So you see, when I went to page 2, like, wait a minute, where's all rows? And a lot of times our end users expect it to work differently. They expect to work where it says, when I select these rows, I want to select it for every page. move down so you can see a little bit here. All right, so when I go to page 2, page 6, page 8, all the rows are now selected. So we've added a new select all mode that says it can be either for the page, none, or all pages. Now, I recommend, there's only one recommendation I make for select all, and that is if you are going to use select for all pages, please do not do it when you have hundreds of thousands of records. And the short answer is, and I've racked my brain, and I like I said, I know a lot about the web and so forth. There isn't a simple way, because what we have to do with the grid is keep track of, every item that you've selected here. So when we go here and so forth, right? And that can get expensive. So if you have thousands of rows, hundreds of thousands of rows, go with the page mode. If you've got less than thousands of rows, hundreds of rows, then you're probably okay with just the all pages. But otherwise, you may want to ask, if you are going to go all pages, you have thousands of rows, what's your scenario? Are you selecting all and going, hey, update this or delete that or so forth? In that case, you may want to do something where you say, look, have a button here that says update the grid, all rows, or something like that. Put that function on the outside so that what it would do is it would go back to the back end when you click that button, update all the data in the back end, and then just refresh the grid. And that's also a much more performance scenario as well. All right, so the short answer is right now we've got this select all updated. Now, any questions regarding this?
I don't see any questions regarding that, no.
Okay, so let's move forward. And if we, like I said, do not worry. If we missed any, at the end of this, I will absolutely address all of it. So we've got a new context menu. The batch edit mode has been enhanced greatly. Select all rows. It's a very nice feature, and you can see it works very sort of a client-side feel to it as well. All right, let's talk about the HTML editor control enhancements. We've done a couple of things. We've introduced an external ribbon, and we've got a custom color picker. And what that means is that if you take a look at the demo for HTML editor, we've got this feature where we introduced the ribbon bar in the last release. In the last release, when we introduced, this was the standard toolbar. And it's great. It's beautiful. I like it. In the Metro mode, we've got these nice new icons. I really like it. I should have talked more about these icons. But yeah, these are slick new icons in the Metro modes that we've introduced. Now, in the let's use Moderno, and because it shows it much bigger. What happens is if you go to the toolbar mode demo, you can choose between menu, which is the regular one, or you can choose ribbon. Now, ribbon essentially has the same set of functionality, but it gives it as a ribbon, and I really like the ribbon. People are really used to the ribbon now, and when we first introduced, we've actually, customers were asking us for a long time. We fought the ribbon because we didn't know a good way as a web metaphor, because there wasn't one. And then Microsoft went ahead and introduced it in their Office Online set of suites, and we said, okay, now we see a good approach to this that is light, it's web-based, and it's not a sort of a heavy Windows metaphor. And we implemented something similar and better, because you can't customize any of the Microsoft stuff. With ours, you've got a whole set of customizations with custom menu items, actions, and so forth in here. So we introduced this ribbon. Now, in this release, what we've done is give you the capability to separate this ribbon out. So let's say now I want to have this ribbon, and you'll see that now the ribbon is no longer attached to that HTML editor. In fact, it's now supporting as a top level navigation metaphor. So for example, I can collapse it, and I can see now I've got a top level menu item that controls my HTML editor. So I can still select cranberries, click home, and bold that item, or I can use this other item here and say, okay, load up this document. So as I click on each individual HTML item here, it's loading that up, and I've still got this top level ribbon item here. So it's an awesome, awesome slick feature. It gives you a whole range of options in how you do this. And setting it up is super easy. You just set the toolbar mode to external ribbon, and then simply set the associated ribbon ID of the HTML editor to that external ribbon control. Super easy to associate and control. Now, The other major feature that we've added is our custom color picker. Now, our custom color picker, if you're not familiar, let me bring up the editor's control real quick. There you go. If you bring up the data editors, we have this color picker. And this color picker has a, color editor. This color editor allows you to say, okay, let me choose a color. Well, I don't see any colors in here I like. I want my own custom color. So not only can I drag this mouse around, choose any of the colors myself from the rainbow and the range of infinite colors that are out there, I can select any one of these, right? And say, okay, where for the top, I don't want it so gray. I want it maybe a little bit closer to this. Or let's say I want to have this green, right? So I'll select OK, and you can see it's immediately updated. And now for the background color, I'll say, look, I want a red. So it's beautiful, it's awesome, and we have integrated that editor inside of our HTML editor, and you can now select that. And I apologize, it's just cutting off here a little bit to the side here, but it's absolutely supported now in our HTML editor. So take a look for that. Now let's move forward, and I'll mention it once again. Everything that I've shown so far is available in MVC as well. And yes, I'll cover a couple of MVC topics at the end as well. Okay. All right. So let's move forward. All right. Scheduler enhancement. We've done a couple of small things for the scheduler. In fact, I'll just show you real quick. It's a small feature, but it's great for UI, and that's the capability to have a floating time for all-day events, right? So what it means is when I've got, let's say, an event that spans multiple all-day events, you can see that it floats across those days. And it's a small UI thing, but it's great, and it works across the time zones as well. So small feature, really, you don't have to really do anything to get that feature, but it's just something that we've updated. And as somebody had mentioned, it's a long time coming that some people were really waiting for. So we've got that supported, and I hope it'll excite some people and help other folks out. All right. The next thing is we've added, we've updated the image slider. So let's go back to, okay, let's go back to the demos. Go to image slider. We've done a couple of things to the image slider. We've got a navigation bar mode, right? This essentially lets you hide the navigation. So you can simply use this as a way to launch the images separately, right? Use them as a sort of a link. And why would you want to do that? Well, people like our slider. So you've got the capability now to simply just show thumbnails and have them pop up as links. Now, let's jump over to the round panel. If you go into our multi-use site controls, we've updated the round panel. I like this control. It's a simple control, it's just there for visual effect, but I like it, right? Because it kind of lets you set up a way to show your customers something. So let's say you have some piece of information, you want to put it up on the right-hand side or something. The round panel is great for that, and we've done a couple things. The first thing is it's CSS3 based now, so it's no longer using images to draw onto for the round sides. Now, this is supported for our newer Metro themes. So the CSS3 and so forth is definitely supported by our newer themes. And what's great about that is the performance benefit that you get out of it. So you've got these nice animations. So let's say for Moderno, I've got this beautiful round items. And you can see I've got a nice animation with it as well. So as you can see, the collapse button also is used for expanding and collapsing. So if I don't want an animation, I can remove it as well. So you can see that it just pops up really fast and easy. Or if I don't want to use it as a collapsible item, I can just use it as a group box. I can show the header or not show the header. There's a lot of different options that I have here. Now, the other big feature that we've added is you can make your site more performant by delaying loading of information that's inside of the round panel. So now when I expand it, it's going to go and fetch that information, which is great because now the site, when it first gets loaded, will be more performant because I don't have to spend the time to go and load this information. It'll only be loaded on expanded on first click of the round panel. And you can still add items like buttons in there to refresh the data and so forth. So awesome feature. Let me know how you guys are building things with this. I love to see examples of how customers using this stuff. All right, the next feature is the date editor. The date editor was, I'm just wondering if I left that demo open. Probably didn't. Okay, so let's go back into our date editors. And for the calendar, we've got the support now, and it's also for our date edit control, but we've got support now for disabled dates. This is huge, right? Huge in the sense like it's a huge UI thing. You know, I never considered myself a sort of a UI expert, and I'm not, right? But I've come to learn the value of good user experience, right? If Apple has taught us nothing else, is that user experience is super important. And it's these little UI things like this that matter to our end users. So for example, you know, if you've got somebody in your organization that doesn't work on Wednesdays, well, this is super important because then if you're trying to schedule them for a meeting that goes on Tuesday and Thursday and you start selecting a range of values, it says, oh yeah, sorry, they're not available. So immediately they're able to know right away, okay, I can make a decision based on this. So disabled dates are very important, and I'm happy to say we support them. And they're not just grayed out, they're not selectable as well. So as you can see, I can click on them, but I can't select them as well. So not only can you define them with custom rules like all Wednesdays, you can define them by a list of dates as well. So take a look at this demo and you can see how we exactly do them. So we can say, listen, if it falls on a Wednesday, disable it. Or use these custom dates, or you can pull them from your database as well. So awesome little feature that we've added. Now let's talk about the theme builder. I have been working with the team to improve our theming story, and you know, one of the things is we have supported the model of the themes from ASP.NET in general. So ASP.NET introduced this capability to let you create a theme. Now let me close this and bring this theme builder here. This is our ASP.NET Theme Builder tool. When you first bring it up, there's a little pop-up that says, do you want to create a new theme, etc., etc. As I showed earlier, our themes are highly customizable, which means they're granular. You can get down and say, listen, I want the background color this, I want the image for the background that, etc., etc., etc. That's great. That's power. But that's not easy, right? Sometimes you can't have it both ways, right? That whole old saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I'll tell you guys something. You know, I've lived in this country a long time, but I wasn't born here. So when I hear these kind of metaphors, I'm like, what does that mean? What do you mean you can't have a cake and eat it too? What it means is, if you have your cake in your hand and you eat it, then it's gone, which means you can't have it both ways, right? Which means that sometimes, you know, you can't have the power and complexity while still having the simple use case as well. So nowadays, you know, there's a lot of scenarios out there that says, look, I want to simplify how I theme something, meaning that I want to set basically this font and this color for all the controls, right? Well, we looked at that scenario and we looked at, you know, a lot of these new CSS technologies called Sass and Less that essentially let you style everything using one approach. So we said, well, how can we do that while still maintaining this balance of power that our customers love, that they want to granularly control? And so we sort of have a solution here that I really like. Now, it doesn't mean we're stopping here. It doesn't mean we're not going to keep trying to improve it. But this right now, I think, is a great feature, which says, listen, you know, you can now take a theme, for example, our Metropolis theme, and set the base font set. So here's my set of fonts that I want. Or I can say, and also set the base font size. So let's say I want the base font size to be 14. And I want the base font to be Arial. or Segoe UI, etc., 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 right? You can now define your base font. And on some themes, like our modern themes, like Metropolis-based themes, you can set the base color. Now, if you look in this drop-down, you will see which ones are customizable and which ones are not. So the older themes are customizable for their font. And why is that? It's because the newer themes that are CSS3 based are the ones we can really start doing newer things with, right? And that's because we created some of those old themes like Office 2003 a long time ago. And they're out there, customers using them, right? So we're not going to change them. We're not going to completely modify them. Instead, we're going to introduce newer modern themes based on these modern web principles like Metropolis and Moderno. So what you can do is you can take, for example, the Metropolis, let's take the Metropolis blue theme and say, hey, I don't want Metropolis blue, I want Metropolis green. And I can go here and I've got my color picker and I can say, okay, I want this color, I want this green. So now, and I can even choose which extensions I want them for, including MVC extensions. As you know, our themes are supported both for web forms and MVC. And now when I click OK, what I'm going to get is a set of, it's going to create for me a theme that's like Metropolis Blue, but it is using Metropolis, it's using green as the base color. So what does it mean by base color? Well, it uses that, and you'll notice that sometimes we have a different gradient that's based on that green color. Well, we do some algorithm calculations in there that calculates off that green color. Now, like I said, this is only for a couple of the modern themes, and I've got a blog post that lists exactly which ones. And if you got questions about it, I can point you to the blog post. But the important thing to note about this is here, I've now got the base font set that I wanted, and I've got the base color. And that's fantastic. And the size of the fonts as well. So sometimes you may be styling this and said, hey, I went and changed that little thing for how that padding works on this, and you may have forgotten about it because you've got that granular control. So now you can rest assured you've got a theme very much like what the DevExpress designers do. We've got world-class graphic designers working on our graphic design team. These guys study everything from iOS to Metropolis to Android, and they know all the metaphors. They know all the desktop metaphors for WinForms. They know the desktop metaphors for web and Silverlight. They have studied all this stuff. They take the best of this stuff when we design our themes. So you can rest assured that you will now have a theme based on a color of your choosing and a font set of your choosing, while still getting that beautiful look and feel that is similar to our themes, right? So I really like this approach, and I hope you guys use it. I hope you guys create it. So that's the big news with our theme builder, and let's move on. So this leads me now to talk about, and I'll come back to the questions. Don't worry, Amanda. I'm going to stop after this next feature. But I want to talk about the new theme. So we've got a new theme in here. It's called Mulberry, right? And I'm happy to say I had some influence on that, because the other option was we were going to call it Fresh Lilac. I like lilac. I just like the name Mulberry better. And honestly, if you look at my blog post, this color more closely matches Mulberry. Anyways, and there's a link to that article on Wikipedia, if you looked up lilac and so forth. But let's look at the theme. So the theme is based on Moderno, but it doesn't have paddings as big as Moderno. The Moderno was influenced to use more for touch support. So you can see it's very similar to Moderno, it has a similar font set and so forth, but it's got some softer colors and it's got a different base color, but a similar font set, and like I said, not as big paddings, which is really great for the grid. So for example, let's change the grid theme here to Mulberry, and it'll really become apparent here. So now when I select some rows, you can see I've got a really nice set of grays as well as this mulberry color that I've got for the grid. Now, why did we create this? Well, we created this because we created a demo called DevAV. Now I'm going to put this in full screen mode so you can see it here. Amanda forces me to use 1280 by 780 here, but we made this demo as a responsive thing. And by the way, I don't mean to. Amanda's absolutely right. There's a lot of customers out there that have different screen sizes. But you can see from this demo what what we try to do here is to inspire you to create beautiful demos. And we thought about how could we show off something cool and interesting. So the first thing I want to talk about is, obviously this theme is beautiful, but the theme, and I hope you guys take this and run with it, right? Because it's got some real cool ideas in here as well, right? Let's take a look at the idea. First of all, is that you'll notice that there's no top level, how do you say, navigation. So for example, you may think, well, I've got here, so okay, I'm taking a look at employees. But as I mouse over, did you notice that I got a pop-down menu? I didn't click or anything. It just, as soon as I moused over, I got a menu. So if I go to the dashboard, you'll see that I've got a different set of information here. Now, here I'm using our docking, so I can drag this over here, or I can not show some items, which is great. So if I was using this on a touch device, I can simply touch those buttons, have them appear or disappear or move them around, or I can drag around this information, say I don't want to show it here, or I want to change the sort order for city and state, etc., etc. So it's a different metaphor in that I don't have grid-based items here. Now we can introduce them in there, but we said, okay, what would happen if we take some of those items and separated them out up top, right? So here, if I wanted to print this report, here I've got the dashboard report using our extra reports, and I can now print this, right? I can print this to PDF, or I can print it to my local machine and so forth. Now that's the first thing. The second is, if we go back and let's take a look at products. Normally, we always have the need to show master detail information. So in this demo, what we've done is shown off the capability. So let's go to employees to show off the capability that says, look, here I've got a grid, and I click on this information. Rather than have a plus minus sign, what would happen if I take that and show that detail information here? Well, it's a different UI and it's a different metaphor, but I think it works, right? And what's also slick about it is, it's responsive. So as I start minimizing this, you'll notice this item was moved on here. Now, it won't obviously work. So if, let's say this was a phone screen here, right? You'll see it's not designed for phones, and that's because it's designed for desktops and tablets. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, you know, ASP.NET controls, powerful grid controls, pivot grids, schedulers, they're just too big for mobile. If you're going to go mobile, please look at DevExtreme Mobile. If you looked at DevExpress.com, then you'll see that we've got, you know, a whole thing. Now, guys, I know we set this for an hour. I'm going to run a little bit longer. If you stick around, I promise you I've got something really cool to show. So just hang on, and I'm going to get right into it. All right, so that's the new theme. Mobile. For mobile, we have a product called DevExtreme Mobile. Please take a look at that. That's for building web. And tomorrow, Julian is doing a webinar on this stuff that you can see how to build mobile-specific items using JavaScript. Okay, so finally, I'm going to show you the cool thing that I kept alluring to, because I know we're getting to it at the end. Here's all the items I mentioned: scheduler enhancements, image slider, round panel, data editor, theme builder, and the new theme, and the new demos that we mentioned. All right, so let's get into the thing I really, really wanted to show you, which is we're going to need Visual Studio for this. All right, so let's pop up Visual Studio, and I promise you we'll do a Q&A session after this. All right. The big thing is we have a new control. So to really show you guys this, if you go to js.devexpress.com, you know DevExpress is involved in every major platform, from mobile to .NET, for all the platforms. You know we are out there helping to support you. Now we do it, when we first released our JavaScript technologies, obviously it was for mobile. Now in this release, you'll notice that we have done not just mobile. So if you click on this little hamburger icon up here, you'll notice we got mobile development, we've also got web development. What that means is we have a client-side data grid widget. Now, stick around. I know you're thinking, wait a minute, I'm not interested in client-side, I'm interested in ASP.NET. Stick around, we got something I want to show you. The first thing is I got to show you this client-side grid though. It supports touch, it's beautiful, it works completely client-side, works with any RESTful data service out there, and it's got this beautiful scroll bar that's just awesome. That DevAV demo I showed you, there's a complete client-side version of it as well, right? So if you want to use a client-side approach, you can do that as well. And It's got support for AngularJS, Knockout, jQuery, so you can use it as a widget. And Julian will show you all this tomorrow. What I wanted to show you was that if you take a look at the demos, let's take a look at the Data Grid technical demos, and I'll just show you this real quick because it's important. Not only does it support editing and all this beautiful stuff, but it's got support for I like this one, the remote data grouping. Why? Because this is a set of data out there on the web, and as you scroll down, you'll see one of the things the guys are really proud about is that when I'm not on top of the grid, you'll be asking, where'd the scroll bar go? Now, if you keep your eye on the scroll bar, right, popped up as a minute thing, right? As I scroll down, it's just a miniature thing. But as I move my mouse over, it goes, oh, hello, how are you? You want a scroll bar? Here I am. As I mouse out, it says, okay, you don't want me. That's fine. Or if you want to drag from the scroll bar, great. That was really slick. Now, when I don't do anything, it disappears. I really love that. It's as I talked about, those little UI things are super important. Anyways, what is important about this grid, though, is this remote data grouping feature works with tons of rows. This is virtual scrolling. This is a client-side JavaScript grid. And if you're afraid of JavaScript, do not worry. We have an answer for you, especially for web forms. Now, I wanna talk about that. So let's go into ASP.NET because I want to show you. Let's create a new ASP.NET project. We're going to use the 14.1 template gallery. You can see I make a lot of demos. I'm going to choose web forms, web application, and we'll select one wizard. Now, the ASP MVC guys may be asking, what about MVC? Hang on, I got an answer for you as well. I'm just going to create the standard web project here, right? It's got this beautiful layout that gives you headers, footers, left menu side, etc. And in it, in this demo, what we do is we put some fake mock data. And we do it for your benefit so you can see how we data bind something. Now, I'm just going to run this. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Brings up Firefox here. And let's just refresh here. And here I've got the grid, right? This is all ASP.NET controls, right? Here's the virtual scrolling mode. This is ASPX grid view. Powerful, awesome. A lot of times, though, customers will say, listen, I'm working with so-and-so, we've got a RESTful service, I want to use a client-side data grid. Or, listen, I just want to use a client-side data grid, but still have it bound to server-side data. In a lot of cases, customers are coming to us and saying, how can I use a client-side data grid? And when would I use a client-side data grid? In my opinion, the server-side ASP.NET data grid is going to be, right now, it's much more powerful than the client-side data grid. The client-side data grid has advantages, though, right? Meaning it doesn't need to go to the server to get its data. So if you have a need where you need to run the client-side data grid, for some reason or other, we now have a solution for you for ASP.NET Web Forms. Now we're going to have a solution in MVC as well. So what I want to show you is if you wanted to use, if we go to design mode, I'm going to remove our server-side grid here, and I've kept the data source. So if you look in your toolbar here, you'll see DevExtreme for ASP.NET. It's in beta. What we've done is we've taken the DX data grid, which is our client-side data grid, and wrapped it in an ASP.NET Web Forms control. And you might say, wait a minute, why not MVC? We'll eventually have an MVC support as well. And that's because in MVC, you can actually use our client-side grid. Actually, you can use our client-side grid in anything. You can use it with Web Forms as well. The reason we made it a Web Forms wrapper control is, you know, we knew some customers are not super big fans of JavaScript. If you are not big into JavaScript, but you want to use our client-side data grid, you now can. So what you do is you simply drag the grid, drop it onto the form, or you can just double-click and it'll drop it on as well. This is now the client-side DX data grid. But what you see here is you have the option to data bind it. So I can right-click here, create a new data source, or I can select SQL data source. I can enable filtering, searching, group selection, grouping, etc., editing. It's got a lot of awesome features right built in. So I'll enable some of these features, and now let's run this. I'll save and I'll Control F5 this. So now we have the client-side data grid, and I bound that to a server-side data source control. Does that just blow your mind or what? And I've got these awesome features right in the grid. So now I can group by company, or I can search for a name. So let's search for Anna. Now, I don't have that wired up, but yeah, absolutely, you can support it. Now, the other cool thing is you can do filtering right from the grid as well. So we haven't, so I didn't have the data source enable, how do you say, editing, but if you do, you can simply double click and start going to edit mode. But also, you'll see that paging is fully supported. Now, right now, I haven't done anything to this grid in terms of I haven't told it how I want it to appear. And I've got too many columns here, but if you'll notice that this grid is responsive. So people are always asking me, do you have a responsive grid? Yes, we do, right? So it's a completely client-side grid. The ASP.NET Grid View is also responsive, but as I mentioned, because it's got more features in it, more things for summaries, all these different things, you know, it's going to be much more capable. So if you want to do certain things with the server-side data grid, it supports things. Now, this grid in its own right is very powerful, and Julian tomorrow will show you all of its power. Join him tomorrow for that webinar. But what I wanted to ask you today is, this is available as a beta. Now, the key thing I want you to take away from this thing, because you may be going, hey, you know, I want to use this. It's there, but you're going to need DevExtreme. So if you have Universal, you're covered, right? Which is why I recommend upgrade to Universal. If not, you're going to need DevExtreme from our site. So take a look. Go to your cart. You know, if you don't have hit upgrade, but you're going to need at least DevExtreme Web or DevExtreme Universal. So my recommendation is upgrade. Right now, you know, we're going to look at different scenarios, but I want to hear back from you. I want you to tell me, is that useful? You know, is this something a ASP.NET Web Forms developer wants? Do you guys want to use a client-side data grid that is wrapped, right? Do you find benefits out of this? Please let me know. You know, this is my job. This is what I love to hear, what scenarios you customers are using and how it will help you. Now, you know, as I said, we've got more plans in the works. You know, like I said, we've got a whole set of client-side technologies that we're still going to grow and invest in. And as you can see, ASP.NET is still very much our focus. It's what we know our customers love, it's used, and you can see the breadth of features that we've done. We've got this major spreadsheet control, the huge things we've done with themes, the lot of support new things that we've put in. So I will stop here because we ran just about 5 minutes over, and let's start taking some questions, and I'd love to hear from you.
All right, everybody, finishing up our 14.1 launch week, we have our last webinar, DevExtreme 14.1 with CTO Julian Bucknell. It's at our regularly scheduled time tomorrow morning, Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And you can feel free to register for that or any of our upcoming webinars at devexpress.com/webinars. And that is it for this one. If you haven't already, please download and try 14.1 today. And just a reminder, when you leave this webinar, you will see a short survey. Please take a second to comment. We do appreciate it. And that's it. Thanks for joining us. And of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.